Equity valuation concepts and basic tools. Curriculum questions. First question. An analyst estimates the intrinsic value of a stock to be in the range of 17.85 euros to 21.45 euros. That's what he expects the price to be as per his fundamentals, as per his analysis. This is what he believes, being a rational investor. But the current market price of the stock is 24.35 euros, which means his valuation tells him that the price should be between this range, but the market price is more. Intrinsic value is less, market price is more. So this stock is most likely overvalued. That makes A to be the correct option. Next, an analyst determines the intrinsic value of an equity security to be equal to $55. That's what his analysis tells him, fundamental analysis, rational belief as an investor that this should be the price. But if the current market price is $47, whereas the intrinsic value as per the investor is $55, the equity is most likely undervalued. This is totally opposite to the question we have done. That makes A to be the correct option. Next, in asset-based valuation models, the intrinsic value of a common share of stock is based on the estimated market value of company's assets. Yes, it is one of the components, but not just this alone. Estimated market value of the company's assets plus liabilities, wrong. In fact, if you remember the accounting equation, assets is equal to liabilities plus equity. So basically equity is equal to assets minus liability. So whatever the result comes, dividing this with number of shares will give you the intrinsic value of common share of stock based upon the asset-based valuation model. So that has to be C then. Estimated market value of the company assets minus estimated value of the liabilities, and then dividing it with the number of shares. So that makes C to be the correct option. Next, which of the following is most likely used in a present value model? Enterprise value, we discussed a little while ago in our reading overview. Price to free cash flow and free cash flow to equity. Enterprise value and price to free cash flow, these two are used in multiplier models. Whereas free cash flow to equity, this is the model that we use to determine the present value or discounted cash flow model. So this is the right option. C. Book value model is least likely to be considered when? Least likely, mind the word, least likely. When using multiplier model, in multiplier model we may use market price to book value per share. See, we have used book value here. An asset-based valuation model, so we calculate the value of equity by deducting the market value of assets and liabilities. So we may use the book values in some cases when the market values are not available. So we do use book values in the asset-based valuation model. But the present value model, this model uses discounted future expected cash flows. So this is the method that won't, or that is least likely use the book value method. So that makes C to be the correct option. An analyst is attempting to calculate the intrinsic value of a company and has gathered the following company data: EBITDA, earning before interest, tax, depreciation and amortization, total market value of cash and short-term investments, liabilities, preferred shares. The analyst is least likely to use which of the following methods? EBITDA is used in multiplier model. Total market value and market value of cash and short-term investments, it is used in the asset-based valuation model. Preferred shares also used in the asset-based valuation model. So he is least likely to use the discounted cash flow method. So for the purpose of using discounted cash flow model, the analyst will have to drive the free cash flow to equity or the dividend data. And he will also have to calculate the appropriate rate at which he will discount the future cash flows. So that none of these would be required. So that makes B to be the correct option. An analyst who bases the calculation of intrinsic value on dividend paying capacity, rather than the expected dividend. So basically it's the dividend discount model, or Gordon growth model, that use the expected dividend. But dividend paying capacity is based upon the free cash flow to equity, right? So if the analyst is basing his calculations on the dividend paying capacity rather than the expected value, expected dividend, then he is most likely using dividend discount model? No. Cash flow from operations model? No. He is using free cash flow to equity. That is what determines the firm's dividend paying capacity. B is the result. Correct option. An investor expects to purchase shares of a company today and sell them after 2 years. The investor has estimated dividends for the next 2 years, D1 and D2, and the selling price of the stock 2 years from now, P2. So basically he has the dividend to be paid at the end of year 1, dividend to be paid at the end of year 2, and the price of the stock at the end of year 2. According to the dividend discount model, the intrinsic value of the stock today is the present value of dividend 1, dividend 2, and the stock price at the end of year 2. So some of these will give you the share price. So it's the present value of the future expected dividend D1, D2, and the price. So that makes C to be the correct option. It's a straightforward textbook question. In the free cash flow to equity model, the intrinsic value of a share of stock is calculated as the present value of future expected free cash flow to equity. The present value of future expected free cash flow to equity plus net borrowings. Net borrowings have already been incorporated in FCFE, so no need to add or deduct them again. The present value of future expected FCFE minus fixed capital investment. Fixed capital investments, they have already been factored into the computation of FCFE. So it's a straightforward question. A is the right answer. With respect to present value models, which of the following statement is most accurate? Present value models can be used only if a stock pays a dividend, not necessarily. A firm can be valued, the equity valuation can be done even there is just an expectation of dividend, not the actual dividend. Present value models can be used only if a stock pays a dividend or is expected to pay a dividend. Even a stock pays a dividend, or a stock is expected to pay a dividend, or even a stock is not expected to pay a dividend, we can still calculate the present value model's valuation. Present value models can be used for stocks that currently pay a dividend or expected to pay a dividend or are not expected to pay a dividend. In this case, we can use free cash flow to equity, right? So present value models can be used in any situation. So that makes C to be our correct option. A Canadian life insurance company has an issue of 4.8% $25 par value perpetual, non-convertible, non-callable preferred shares outstanding. Let us first calculate what would be the amount of preferred stock dividend. $25 times 4.8%. So basically the dividend is going to be $1.2. Right? The required rate of return on similar issues is 4.49%. That is the required rate of return on cost of preferred stock. The intrinsic value of a preferred stock is equal to the dividend, that is $1.2, divided by the desired rate of return, that is 4.49%. So 1.2 divided by 4.49% should give you the intrinsic value, and it is equal to 26.726, which is close to 26.73. Next. Two analysts estimating the value of a non-convertible, non-callable, perpetual preferred stock with a constant dividend arrive at different estimated values. So why do they have different valuation? The most likely reason for the difference is that the analyst used different time horizon. Time horizon doesn't matter. Why? Because they are perpetual till infinity. 2. Required rate of returns might be different. That could be the reason. Yes. Estimated dividend growth rates. This is not applicable in the case of preferred stock. Preferred stocks normally pay a fixed amount of dividend. So this could be the reason. Maybe the rates they use for valuation purpose, dividend, the numerator is same for both, but the denominator, the cost of preferred stock, the desired rate of return could be different. This has caused a difference in valuation by both of these analysts. So that makes B to be the correct option. The Beasley Corporation has just paid a dividend of $1.75 per share. If the required rate of return is 12.3% per year and dividends are expected to grow indefinitely at a constant rate of 9.2% per year, the intrinsic value of the Beasley Corporation stock is closest to. Using Gordon growth model, V0 is equal to the current price of the stock is equal to the current dividend that has just been paid multiplied by 1 plus growth rate upon the cost of equity minus growth rate. Have we been given the current dividend that has just been paid or the dividend to be paid? Has just paid a dividend of 1.7. That is D0. Remember, D0 means the current dividend that has just been paid, and in place of D0 into 1 plus G, we might sometimes use D1, and this D1 means the next dividend or the dividend expected. So right now we have been given the current dividend paid 1.75 multiplied by the growth rate added to 1. Growth rate is expected to be 9.2% divided by the cost of equity, that is, or the desired rate of return, 12.3% minus 9.2%. So solving this all should give you 61.645 dollars, so that is approximately 61.65. So that makes C to be the correct option. An investor is considering the purchase of a common stock with a $2 annual dividend. The dividend is expected to grow at a rate of 4% annually. If the investor's required rate of return is 7%, the intrinsic value of the stock is closest to the formula I've just used, D0 1 plus G upon cost of equity minus growth rate. Since D0 that is expected to grow at a rate of 4%, so basically this $2 is D0, which will grow at the rate of 4%. So we will replace D0 with $2. Growth rate is 4% divided by the desired rate of return 7% minus the growth rate 4%. So it's basically 2 multiplied by 1.04 divided by 7% minus 4%, and you should get your result, that is $69.33. So that is C. Next question. An analyst gathers or estimates the following information about a stock. Current price is 22.56 euros. Current annual dividend per share, that is D0, gentlemen. That is D0, that has just been paid 1.6 euros. Annual dividend growth rate between year 1 and 4, that is 9%, and after that growth rate will slow down and that will go for eternity, that is 4%. So it's a two-stage model, high growth rate for the first 4 years and then a constant rate from year 5 onwards. Required rate of return we will use for discounting is 12%, that's cost of equity. Based on dividend discount model, the stock is most likely to be undervalued, fairly valued, or overvalued. So what you will do, you will have to discount the future dividends. You will have to discount the share price as well. That will calculate for the year 5. So basically, the price of the stock is the present value of the dividends to be received. Let us first draw a timeline. Let's draw it right here. Year 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. The first year dividend we are expected to receive is 1.6 to be grown by 9%. So 1.6 euros multiplied by 1.09 is going to be $1.744. This is the dividend expected for year 1. Then the same dividend will grow at the rate of again 9% for the next year. It's going to be 1.9009. So we're going to write it 1.901. Then the same dividend will grow at the rate of 9% again for year 3. Is going to be 2.072. 2.072. For the 4th year, it will go again at the rate of 9%, 1.09, so it will give you 2.258, 2.2585, so which if rounded off gives you 2.259. Okay, now, gentlemen, this is a twisted point. This dividend at the end of year 4 will now continue to grow at the rate of 4% till eternity. Now, this is the growth rate that will be seen from year 5 onwards, right? So, growth rate is 4%. The dividend that has just been paid at the end of year 4, which will grow at the rate of 4%. If we apply dividend discount model at the end of year 5, it will leave us with the share price at the end of year 4. So let us apply the formula. It will give us the value of the stock at the end of year 4. So we will use the dividend 2.259 that has just been paid at the end of year 4, which will grow at the rate of 4%, that is 1.04, divided by the cost of equity, that is 12%, minus the growth rate, and it should give us 2.259 multiplied by 1.04. Gentlemen, this is 4. Please remember it is 4, not 9. Divided by 12% minus 4. And then this gives you V4. Why V4? Why? Why? We are doing this computation at the end of year 5. Remember, this dividend 2.259 into 1.04 is the dividend received at the end of year 5, and it will go on increasing at the 4% growth rate. When we discount this dividend received at the end of year 5 using this formula, Gordon growth model, it will bring us the share price at the end of year 4. That's why I've written V4. Now, what you have to do in order to calculate the value of the stock now, that is 0, you will have to discount 1.744, 1.901, 2.072, 2.259, as well as 29.376 or 0.3767. This is the value of the stock at the end of year 4. So we are going to discount all these now. 1.744 upon the discount rate. We're going to use this 12%. You can either multiply it with the discount factor for the first year at 12%, or you can simply divide it with 1.12 raised to the power 1. Then 1.901 divided by 1.12 raised to the power 2. Plus next dividend 2.072 divided by 1.12 raised to the power 3. Plus, now we have two numbers at the end of year 4. One is for the dividend to be divided with 1.12 raised to the power 4 plus the stock value at the end of year 4, which is 29.367 upon 1.124 raised to the power 4. Why same discount factors for both these? Because these both cash flows are at the end of year 4. This is the dividend, this is the share price at the end of year 4. If you do all this computation, the number that you should get is approximately $24.64, right? That is the valuation based upon your computation. But if you look at the current share price, that is 22.56 euros. Sorry, it's not dollars, it's euros. So your model tells you that it's 24.64, but the current market price is low. So it means it is undervalued. That is A. Next, an analyst is attempting to value shares of a Dominion company. The company has just paid a dividend of 0.58 per share. This is D0 then, that has just been paid. Dividends are expected to grow by 20%. That is your growth rate, G, right? And then, okay, now this is interesting. This G1 basically represents the growth rate for year 1. G2 15%. This is the growth rate after the year 1. And from third year onward, the dividends are expected to grow at 5.6%. So it means from third year onwards, this is the growth rate. If the required rate of return is 8.3, the intrinsic value. Now this is interesting. Now let us first draw the timeline. Now let us write it as D1, D2, and D3, and then we will see what we can do. We need to bring these dividends down to year 0 to find the value of the stock. So this is D0 basically, 0.58. We have to convert it into D1. So you can do that by just multiplying it with 1 plus growth rate. This will bring this current dividend to the future year 1 dividend. 0.58 into 1.2, that is the first year's growth rate is 20%. So you will write 0.58 multiplied by 1.20. That gives you 0.696. 0.696. Then next year, this dividend will grow at the rate of 15%, which means it will be then 0.8004. Okay, now, gentlemen, this D2 will now grow at the rate of 5.6%, and this growth rate will go on till eternity. So now I can apply the model for valuation here in order to find the share price at the end of year 2. V2 is equal to the current dividend that has just been paid, 0.800, that would be paid, multiplied by the growth rate that is going to be 5.6% till eternity, divided by the required rate of return minus the growth rate. So if you solve this all, let me do it for you, multiplied by 1.56, divided by 8.3% and 5.6%, multiplied by 100, that gives you 31.304. 31 point, this is value to you at the end of year 2, 31.3045. So this is the dividend at the end of year 1. This is the dividend at the end of year 2. And this is the value of the stock at the end of year 2, right? By using the dividend discount model. So bringing all these future cash flows or the future numbers into the present terms will give you the current share price. What you will do, since the discount rate to be used is you can simply multiply the discount factor for year 1, 2, and 3, or you can, since it's in points, so you will find it hard to trace them in the present value table. So simply use this arrangement, 1.083 raised to the power 1. This is the first year discount. Then 1.083 raised to the power 2, and this to be divided with 1.083 squared as well, because both are the numbers at the end of year 2. So bringing these futures cash flows into the present terms will give you, let me calculate this. So first year dividend discounted to year 0 is 0.6427, 0.6824 for second year dividend, and the share price at the end of year 2 discounted for year 0 is 26.69. So if you add all these three, you will get the value of the stock as of today, that is 28.01517. That's too long. This is just 28.01. So which is approximately C. Hideki Corporation has just paid a dividend of yen 450 per share. That's the current dividend. I'll call it D0. Just paid. Annual dividends are expected to grow at a rate of 4% per year over the next 4 years. And at the end of 4 years, shares of Hideki Corporation are expected to sell for 9,000 yen. That is good for us. We have been given the share price at the end of year 4. If the required rate of return is 12%, the intrinsic value of a share of Hideki Corporation is closest to. So the share price will be equal to the first year dividend discounted, second year dividend discounted, third year dividend discounted, and the share price discounted at the end of year 4 as well. So we will have the first 4 years dividends plus the share price at the end of year 4. So what you will do is simply write the dividends, divided them with the discount factor that is used 1.12, 1.12 squared, 1.12 cube, 1.12 raised to the power 4, as well as 1.12 raised to the power 4, because this is the share price at the end of year 4, right? It's P4. So adding all these, let us write the D1, D2, D3s and D4s as well. So this is D0 to be increased at the rate of 4%. So it's going to be 450 times 1.04, 468 yens. Okay, grow it again at the rate of 4%. It's 486.72. Then at the rate of 4% again, it's 506.188, which can be written as 506.19. And again, at the rate of 4%, it's 526.44. 526.44. So solving this and this and this and this and this and adding this and this and this and this should give you 7220 Japanese yen. That is the intrinsic value of the share price as of today. So that makes C to be the correct option. B, 7220 is B. B is the correct option. Next, the Gordon growth model can be used to value dividend-paying companies that are expected to grow very fast, is in a mature phase of growth, or very sensitive to business cycle. One of the assumptions of Gordon growth model is that the company is in a mature phase of growth. That's one of the assumptions. It's a straight textbook question, so you will say that it's option B. The best model to use when valuing a young dividend-paying company that is just entering the growth phase is most likely to. Gordon growth model, we just discussed a little while ago that it's suitable for the firm that is in the maturity level. So that's the model we use for mature firms. That's in the maturity stage. Two-stage dividend discount model is used for those companies that are moving from growth stage to maturity stage. And three-stage model is appropriate for those firms, those newly entrants, young firms that have just entered the market. So they will first see a massive growth. Growth will then slow down and then that will be stabilized. So that's the three model. So this is the most appropriate version of formula that we can apply to value a young dividend-paying company. That makes C to be the correct option. Next. An equity analyst has been asked to estimate the intrinsic value of a company stock of Omega Corporation, a leading manufacturer of automobile seats. Omega is in mature industry, and both its earnings and dividends are expected to grow at a rate of 3% annually, constant growth rate. Which of the following is most likely to be best model for determining the intrinsic value of Omega's share? Clearly, Gordon growth model, because the growth is steady, so that's the most appropriate model. Free cash flow to equity model is normally used for the firms that pay no dividend. So here we have the dividend number as well as the growth rate. And multi-stage, two-stage or three-stage is used for the firms that are expected to show different growth rates in different phases of its life. So this is again not suitable. So A is the most appropriate one and A is the right answer. Next, the price-earning ratio that is derived from Gordon growth model is inversely related to which of these? So first let us see what he's talking about. This is the Gordon growth model, D1 upon cost of equity minus growth rate. Okay, what is price-earning ratio? Price upon earning. So let us, if we divide it with the earnings, that is the expected earning for year 1, and dividing the right side of the equation also with E1, so as to keep the equilibrium on both sides. So this P0 upon E1 is in fact the price earning ratio. Now bringing this E1 as a part of numerator and writing it as D1 over E1, thereby D upon E is the dividend payout ratio, DPO, dividend payout ratio. Upon KE, the required rate of return, the cost of equity, minus the growth rate. And this is your price earning multiple. Now, let's see. The price earning ratio that is derived from Gordon growth model is inversely related to the growth rate. No, rather it is directly related with the growth rate. How? Because if the growth rate is increased, the denominator will be reduced. When the denominator would be reduced, the ratio would go up. So PE is directly related to G, even if it is in the denominator, but increase in G will reduce the denominator and hence increase the ratio. So this is incorrect. It is directly related, not inversely. There is a direct relationship between P ratio and the growth rate. We are looking for an inverse relationship. What about the dividend payout ratio? Dividend payout ratio in the numerator. So if the DPO goes up, the price earning goes up. So this is wrong as well. It's a direct relationship. Now look at this. Required rate of return. If the required rate of return goes up, the denominator expands. Larger denominator will cause the ratio to fall. So if the desired rate of return, the cost of equity goes up, the ratio would fall, right? So increase of KE will cause the price earning multiple to fall. So this is the inverse relationship. And that is why it is your right answer. Next, the primary difference between P multiples based on comparables and P multiples based on fundamentals is that fundamentals based PE are forward looking. It's a straight textbook approach question because your regular P multiple comparables, they are based upon the past numbers, historical multiple values. Whereas P multiples based upon fundamentals, upon the future, they are forward looking. They are based upon the future expectation. Look no further. A is the right answer. An analyst makes the following statement. He says, use of PE and other multiples for analysis is not effective because the multiples are based on historical data. I disagree with this statement. P multiples are not always on historical data. We just discussed a little while ago. P based upon fundamentals. It's not that they're always based on historical data. We can use the expected future values, forecasted values. So this is a wrong statement. And second statement, he says, and because not all companies have positive accounting earnings, so we shouldn't use P or other multiples. Fine, if a firm has losses, operating losses, we can use earning before interest, tax, depreciation and amortization. Other than earnings, we also have many other denominators, market price to sales price per share, market price per share upon book value per share, market price per share upon cash flow from operating activities per share. Where there is earning, there is no earning here. So this, it's not that you have to have positive earnings to calculate the multiples. Both of these statements are inaccurate. Both of these, the analyst statements is most likely inaccurate with respect to both historical data and earnings. Wrong. A is the right answer. An analyst has prepared a table of the average trailing 12 months price to earning, P, price to cash flow, and price to sales ratios for Tanaka Corporation for the years 2014-2017. Okay. As of the date of valuation in 2018, the trailing 12 months P, PCF and PS are respectively 9.2, 2.5 and 8.0. Based on the information provided, the analyst may reasonably conclude that Tanaka shares are most likely, if we calculate the average of the prior 4 years, it comes out to be 4.9 plus 6.1 plus 8.3 plus 9.2 divided by 4 gives you 7.1. We do the same thing for these price upon cash flow, that will be 7.3, and for price to sales is 1.7. Now this is the prior year's average. Compare 7.1 versus 9.2, 7.3 versus 8.0, and 1.7 versus 2.5. So these numbers indicates, these multiples indicate that Tanaka shares are most likely overvalued. Why? Because 2018 multiples are above their averages, last 4 years average. So the share is overvalued. That makes A to be our correct option. An analyst has gathered the following information for Odin Corporation: expected earning per share, expected dividend per share. Dividends are expected to grow at 2.75% per year indefinitely. The required rate of return is 8.35%. Based on the information provided, the price earning multiple for Odin is closest to. Price earning multiple. Price earning multiple, we just learned a formula a little while ago. Dividend upon the earning, that is the dividend payout ratio for year 1, divided with the cost of equity minus growth rate. Plug in the numbers. Dividend expected is 2.7 out of the total earning per share of 5.7, divided by the expected rate, desired rate 3.5% minus 2.75 is the growth rate. If you solve this all, it give you $8.5. So this is the price earning multiple. That's B. Next, an analyst gathers the following information about two companies, Alpha and Delta. We have the current share price for both firms, last year EPS, and the current year estimated EPS. Which of the following statement is most accurate? Delta has a higher trailing PE based upon historical numbers and lower current estimated PE. We will have to calculate the PE, trailing PE, that is historical one, and the current estimated PE ratio. Let us do it. Let us first calculate the trailing one. So for that, we will divide the current share price with the EPS 3.82. So 57.32 upon 3.82 gives you approximately 15.01. Okay. Let us calculate the Delta's trailing PE multiple. So it's going to be 18.93 divided by 1.35. It will give you 14.02. Okay, so these two are the trailing P multiples based upon the last numbers. Now let us calculate the estimated P multiple. For that, what's the difference? We will take the current share price, 57.32, and divide it with the estimated EPS, that is 4.75. So this will give us 57.32 upon 4.75 will give you 12.07. Do the same thing for Delta. 18.93, the current share price divided by the estimated EPS 1.4, it will give you 13.52. Now you can compare these now. So comparing these side by side, Delta has a higher trailing P multiple comparatively. No, wrong. Delta has a lower trailing P multiple of 14.02 versus 15. This is wrong. And lower current estimated P multiple? No. In fact, higher current estimated P multiple. So A is incorrect. What about B? Alpha has higher trailing P multiple compared to Delta. True. And lower current estimated P multiple compared to Delta. That is true as well. So look no further. B is the correct option. Next question. An analyst gathers the following information about similar companies in the banking sector: First Bank, Prime Bank, Pioneer Trust. We have been given the price to book ratio, and it appears that these two have the low numbers than this, and the price to earning ratio, price to earning multiple, and this appears to be the least one. So which company is likely to be undervalued? The one that will have the lowest multiples, and it appears to be the Pioneer Trust. Remember, the law of one price suggests that similar firms should trade at similar price to book ratio or price to earning multiples. Thus, keeping this idea in our head, we can conclude that the Pioneer Trust appears to be undervalued, and that makes C to be the correct option. Next, The market value of equity for a company can be calculated as enterprise value minus plus minus something. What we can do for a question like this, we can simply write down the formula, the arrangement, that the enterprise value is equal to market value of common stock and preferred stock, market value of common stock plus market value of preferred stock, and then market value of debt, and from this we deduct our cash and marketable securities. Right? Now, since we have to find market value of common stock or market value for equity as our subject, so keeping this here, it's equal to EV minus market value of preferred stock minus market value of debt, and that's all. So your market value of equity is equal to enterprise value minus market value of debt minus market value of preferred stock, and this one remaining plus short-term investments. So as you can see again, market value common stock is EV minus preferred stock minus market value of debt plus short-term investment. So this is the perfect arrangement that is quite in consonance with the last arrangement. So C is the right result, right option. Next. Which of the following statements regarding the calculation of enterprise value multiple is most likely correct? Operating income may be used instead of EBITDA. That is true. It's a true statement. If you have read the text, you will know it's true. Then EBITDA may not be used if the company earnings are negative. In fact, wrong. When the earnings are negative, then you should use EBITDA. This is a wrong statement. Book value of debt may be used instead of market value. If you know the formula just in the previous question, we use the market value of debt, not the book value of debt. This isn't correct as well. So that makes A to be the correct option. Next, an analyst has determined that the appropriate EV by EBITDA for Rainbow Company is 10.2. Okay, let us write it down. EV upon EBITDA is equal to 10.2. The analyst has also collected the following forecast information for Rainbow. Okay, now if you just plug this EBITDA in the denominator, you will get EV. EV is equal to 10.2 multiplied by 22 million, and this should give you 224.4 million. This is EV. What do we need basically? We need value of equity, right? How do we calculate value of equity? Our original formula is EV is equal to equity value plus market value of preferred stock plus market value of debt minus cash or short-term investments. So what do we have here? We have just calculated EV, that is 24.4 million. That's what we need to find out. Equity values to be calculated. What else? Preferred stock isn't present here. Market value of debt is given as 56 million. This is nothing or 0. 56 million, and cash is given as 1.5 million. So making equity value as your subject, what you have is 4.4 million less 56 plus 1.5. So 224.4 minus 5.6 plus 1.5 should give you 169.9 million, and that perfectly matches with almost option A. That is A, and that is your correct option. All right, next question. Enterprise value is most often determined as market capitalization of common stock. EV is equal to market capitalization of common stock and preferred stock minus the value of cash equivalents, that is short-term investments, plus what? Of course, debt. But is it the book value of debt or the market value of debt? Of course, market value, right? Because common stock and preferred stock are, if they are taken at the market value, then debt is also at market. It is, in fact, all of these are at market value. So that makes B to be the correct option. Next, asset-based valuation models are best suited to companies where the capital structure does not have a high proportion of market-based, asset-based valuation model are suited when the assets are tangible that can be easily valued or relatively fairly easy to value them. But if the assets are intangible, it will be difficult to give them the valuation. So asset-based valuation models are best suited for those companies that do not have high proportion of intangible assets. B. Which of the following is most likely a reason for using asset-based valuation? The analyst is valuing a privately held company. We'll discuss. The company has a relatively high level of intangibles that will make asset-based valuation meaningless because it is sometimes difficult to value the intangible assets. The market values of assets and liabilities are different from the balance sheet. So having assets and liabilities different from market value of these assets and liabilities different from the balance sheet, this could help in using the asset-based valuation. So this is not the reason why do we use asset-based valuation. This could assist in using the asset-based valuation models, but it is not the reason we use the asset-based valuation. So it means that we have to deliberate one A. The analyst is valuing a privately held company. This is the correct statement. Asset-based valuations are normally used for those firms that do not have the listed stock or that are not publicly listed, or those securities are not publicly available. So it's used for the companies that are privately held. That makes A to be the correct option. A disadvantage of the EV model for valuing equity is that the following information may be difficult to obtain. Operating income, it's available on the income statement in your regulatory filings. Market value for equity can be determined if it's the listed company. It's quite easy. Or you could use the ultimate earning multiples. But market value of debt, since debt is not, may not be marketable, may be illiquid. So valuing debt or determining the market value of debt could be difficult. That's the right option, B. Next, which type of equity valuation model is most likely to be preferable when one is comparing similar companies? Multiplier model, present value model, or asset-based valuation model? We can use all of these, but since if we are comparing companies in the same industry or similar companies, so multiplier model is suitable. Why? Because such firms have similar fundamentals. So that's why multiplier model is suitable. A is appropriate. Which of the following was most likely considered a weakness of present value models? Which of the following is most likely considered a weakness of present value models? A. Present value models cannot be used for companies that do not pay dividend. In fact, it can be or it should be used for the companies that do not pay dividends. We can use free cash flow to equity models for this. Small changes in model assumptions and inputs can result in large changes in the computed intrinsic value of the security. And this is a very true statement. Any small change in the required rate of return or the growth rate, dividend growth rate, it can result in large swings in valuations. That's the weakness. That is the weakness. Why not C? The value of the security depends on the investor's holding period. Thus, comparing valuation of different companies for different investors is difficult. This is again a wrong statement. It's a totally wrong statement because the intrinsic value of a security, it is not dependent upon the investor's holding period. It can be calculated independently of the holding period. So this is incorrect. Hence, B is the right result, right option.